Yeah, I thought I'd make a little progress report and talk about this round peak banjo book I'm working through, and just kind of talk about some of the things I'm enjoying, some of the things I'm struggling with, and the thing about it is that I'm working on a particular song called Big Eyed Rabbit, and if you look at the tabs, it looks deceptively simple. Everything just happens pretty much on these two frets. A little bit up here, but no, not even here. It's all just in the first three frets, mostly the first two frets. It should be really simple, but what makes it difficult is it's the technique that makes it stand out. Now, I learned, well, I play clawhammer banjo, and it's all clawhammer banjo, or frailing banjo, or old time banjo, whatever you want to call it. But within that, there's certain sub techniques that are really fascinating. The technique I learned is probably the older technique. It's just, some people call it the bum ditty. It's where you strike a string, and then you strum, and then you pop your thumb off the fifth string. So it's, 1, 2, and 3, 4, and it's designed in a way really so you can sing along or talk along. Then there's what folks call the bumpa-ditty technique, and I've heard some people call it a melodic clawhammer technique, and I think that name is suitable because instead of being focused on rhythm, it focuses more on the melody. Immediately, instead of only dividing the second and fourth quarter note into eighths, it immediately divides all the quarter notes into eighths, and it does that by you strike the first string with your middle finger, and then you pull your thumb off the second string, and then you do this. Go back to the default, which is strike the first string and thumb off the fifth string. So it'll sound like. And it really is the same downward motion on the string, but by having to immediately divide that first quarter note, it accelerates the speed in which you have to think, because now you're putting an emphasis on the more subtle parts of the melody, and you're not just playing the bass notes of each measure. So the learning curve, I think, is a little steeper, and there's a lot more combinations. And of course, you can blend the two techniques. Probably bum ditty is more friendly while you're singing, and then you can do the drop thumb technique when you're the bumpa ditty drop thumb technique while you're doing your solos between. And I've only really been digging deep with the drop thumb for about a couple years now. It's been very slow going. But there's this third technique, and I just thought it was kind of more of an aesthetic and less of a style when I first saw it, but I realize now it's very different. They call it round peak style, and it's a style that I think started to become popular in the 1920s, 1930s, from Round Peak, North Carolina, and a lot of people have kind of emulated it, and it's become pretty branded in a way, I guess. It sort of builds off of that melodic clawhammer, a lot of drop thumb, very every quarter note, every eighth note gets a note. But what's different is the biggest trick or vice that I have used is I'd use the hammer-on to divide that first quarter note. But with round peak, everything's pull off. fact, this song that I'm working on, I don't think there's a single hammer-on note at all in this song. Actually, the 3 songs I've been working on, I don't see any hammer-on. It's all pull-off. So. And for me, it's a struggle because my reflexes are I want to hammer on instead of. And so it's hard to talk about, so I'm going to try to go through this song called Big Eyed Rabbit. And I've been working on this for about 2 months, and that's kind of embarrassing. I mean, I do a lot of songs in between. I'll write a lot of simple songs, or I'll play a lot of simple songs that are chord driven. But this song, it just makes my head hurt, and I guess I like that challenge. So. So there's a lot of, I get the feeling that the community of banjo players that came up with this technique, they really played closely with the fiddle players. And the fiddle players, they play on a fretless neck, and so what's really a trademark of round peak is they just yank the frets out and play against a smooth head. So instead of having that kind of deliberate note, half note, it just kind of slides. You can still play round peak with frets, but the artifact of playing that style is, well, first of all, instead of doing chord shapes where they're putting the thumb behind the neck, they play it like a fiddle player, and they kind of wrap their fingers around like this. And the reason they do that is it's so that they don't lose their place because it's fretless. And as a result, they tend to only play in the first few frets here, or they'll just slide their thumb up until it hits that peg. And a lot of times you'll get where they hit the 5th and 7th fret just through muscle memory. Because I don't know if you have ever tried fretting up the neck without looking. It's a bit of a bear to get right. But a lot of their slides, instead of doing a whole step on their slides, so for example right here on that from the A to the B, that in the scale of G, that would be a normal bluegrassy kind of slide. But for round peak, you'll get a lot of half slides. And it's because they resolve that slide with a different note elsewhere in the scale. So. So I was doing that half slide also here on the first string from the 1st fret to the 2nd fret instead of going all the way down to the 3rd fret like you do with the bluegrass style. Instead you just go. And that's kind of cool. It gives it a slight, that slight spooky Appalachian tone without having to switch to a G modal or anything like that. But it's a matter of efficiency, so you can play really fast when you get good at it. I'm not good at it, so I'm not really fast at it yet, but the idea is that because I'm not sliding all the way up, I can quickly move my finger back to the root note and get, moving on to the next part of the next measure. But also, it's those, the plucking, you know, is very common. So if you've done pull-offs where you'll strike a string and then pull off, but a lot of times what they'll do is they'll just kind of like a phantom pull-off. So that's effective. Like I'm gonna strike the third string, but I'll pull off on the fourth string, and then I'll follow it up with a strike to the fourth string. So it'll be so it's a nice way of breaking up those quarter notes into eighth notes in a way that's not typical to the finger motion that you do with clawhammer. Like if you're doing drop thumb, you really can't go from the second string to the first string in a series of eighth notes, but the pull-off lets you do that. I think in my last video I talked a little bit about some of the other tricks, like they'll do a slow roll. And it's whatever it takes with that downward motion to get those eighth notes in. You know, it seems like all these techniques are all about getting those eighth notes in. The truth is, I think a lot of songs that you're singing along with, you really don't, a lot of times you don't even need that eighth note. You can just go. But, you know, it wouldn't be a banjo if you didn't play the eighth note, I guess. So it's kind of like those guitar virtuosos in the 80s. You know, they wanted to. It's all about how fast you could play those 16th notes and run up and down the scale. You know, doodle 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 doodle. The banjo players are really no different. They had their ways of making the music sound fast, and